Well, Rochelle has agreed to sort of kick off this discussion about the Fred Rogers documentary, because she posts, as you have surely seen, she posted a really great feedback on the COP. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Rochelle. Go ahead.
Okay, so I just went off what I posted on the COP. So some of the first thing I wanted to start with was how he saw children, because it's very different how a lot of adults see children. A lot of adults don't appreciate children for who they are at the moment, and they just, I don't know, even in my experience talking with other parents and even relatives, because I've got several kids, they think about, oh, that child will be good at whatever, fill in the blank, when they get older, and not what they're good at right now or what they're doing right now in their life. So it puts too much pressure on the children to become something maybe they necessarily aren't. So I guess the question I had for that was, how can we not put the pressure on the middle schoolers by saying, oh, when you grow up, what are you going to be, or what are your career goals as an adult, but still like guide them towards those goals, but not push any on them right now, I guess. So I guess that was my first question to start a discussion. Thoughts?
I think we do that, like, you know, like you were saying, that we don't view them as whole yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we do that with teens too. I
think so too.
Yeah, it recalls, someone posted an article, it might have been Linda, about I don't know, it was somewhat, you know, stop asking people what do they want to be when they grow up. I mean, I really think that is an answer. That's a question that really, I don't think people are really thinking that when they ask that, because I mean, I don't know anybody who really had a great answer for that, or something that didn't change. So maybe we could, one thing we could do is ask teens and middle schoolers what they would like to be asked. You know, I think that would be actually a great snowball activity. What is it? What kinds of questions would they like to have asked of them, if anything? But certainly that's not one. You know, that one really just puts people in a bind. It puts adults in a bind. You know, much less kids. Yeah, it was Linda who posted that article. Anybody else have an idea about how we can avoid falling into that trap?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. One of the things that I've been looking at a lot is skills-based education. So I think like we can kind of avoid that, like, where do you want to go to college? What do you want to be when you grow up, by like using educational experiences. So we do, like, as educators, and for those of us who are in schools, we have to meet certain standards, but really being able to connect those standards to real life experiences. And I'm not just like talking about Common Core, because I don't think that really meets the goal, but really helping kids understand what the why behind learning what they're learning, and then they can kind of develop who they are through that. Like if you're just saying, well, you got to learn the Pythagorean theorem because you have to learn it, doesn't really help them develop the skills. But if you frame it more like you have to, oh, sorry, Allison, I use skills-based education. So even though you're still teaching the standards, you're connecting those standards to real life skills. Like you're learning the Pythagorean theorem, even if you're not going to be a mathematician, because you're learning a problem solving skill. And so how can you apply that problem solving skill to something that you like? Do you like building boats? So how do you apply that skill? So that's just something that we're really that I've really been like interested in and really looking more deeply into. I don't know if that answers a question, but.
Yeah. Well, it certainly gives us something to think about.
I guess the thing that I thought was interesting with Fred Rogers is that he wasn't scared of silence. So he focused on their individual interests, and then he just waited for them to get comfortable and then just open up. So it wasn't like constant like question, and then expecting answers right away, because that puts a lot of pressure on them and doesn't give them time to think what they really feel about situations.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the idea of using silence and just waiting for an answer to come.
I think Carol, I remember you and Linda talking about that you're right there on that cusp before somebody's about to say something, and you have to be the one that might let it feel awkward before something really important could be said.
Right. You know, I experienced that here sometimes, you know, even in these discussions online, you know, these Zoom discussions, because sometimes it feels like if we're not filled up with somebody, you know, talking head talking, you want to jump in there. But, you know, it takes practice to not fill that in that gap. What else about Mr. Rogers?
I loved his quote that necessity is the mother of invention. I liked it a lot because it gives a new perspective to finding community partners and finding those need gaps instead of just, oh, I have a program idea, let's just do it, even though it's not, maybe it would be awesome, but it's not really meeting a need. So finding a need by looking through what is necessary in your community, what's missing, and then using that to build off of.
Mm-hmm.
So his thoughts on that.
Well, I certainly loved finding out, you know, that about just how the early days of the program and how, you know, the whole tiger thing was just I always tell people you can never tell what's going to work and what's not. You know, I mean, who would have guessed that when he popped out that tiger that said, you know, trying to think of where the very first thing he said, there's something about time, I think, that would, you know, become such a hit, you know, that would be the thing that stuck. Anybody else have any, you know, things that they learned about Mr. Rogers and how the whole thing developed? I didn't know a lot about him or the program itself. Anybody else come across new pieces of information that they thought were interesting?
I think just watching it. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just curious as to who actually grew up while he was on TV and watched him as a child or I'm curious.
Right, raise your hand if you did, so we can see those. So Carly, Rochelle, Allison, and Josie, just for those folks who are not, but Chris did not, and Tyler did not, and I did not. You know, he was far beyond past my time. You know, I mean.
I just actually read a book. I haven't done the reading on Mr. Rogers yet, so that's why it's kind of like to try to piece together some of this question. But I just read a book about him this year called "I'm Proud of You," and it was written by a reporter that became a really close friend of his, and they had a very strong friendship. And he was actually supposed to interview Captain Kangaroo, which that's the show I used to watch, is Captain Kangaroo. And Mr. Rogers. And Mr. Rogers was on longer than Captain Kangaroo, but I just never really liked Mr. Rogers, so I just never watched it, but I got a greater respect for him. And I think one thing that we could add from his approach to things is that he was very relationship based. So that's one of the things that was focused on this book, I'm Proud of You. He wanted to become friends with everyone that he came across. And so he tried to find a connection to each person. So he connected to this reporter, but the reporter saw him do that with other people also in the industry or in his church or in outside of the industry. And so that was kind of an interesting thought for me as an adult with many different kids that I come in contact with, that really personal touch and listening. He was known to be a really good listener, and so that kind of goes along with what some people have just mentioned about the wait time and stuff, that he wanted to know what the other person had to say, so he wasn't always just rushing in with his opinion or moving on to the next thing or trying to fill that space. So that was one thing I could connect from what I read, the book I read about him this year. So.
What made you pick the book up, may I ask? Was it this assignment, or had you already, it sounds like you already had chosen that book.
We do a reading program at my school where staff and students are encouraged to read books that are suggested by other people. And I have a 5th grade teacher that loves Mr. Rogers. And she loves Mr. Rogers and she loves The Wizard of Oz. So she has lots of different themed things, and Snoopy. So and this is very 5th grade teacher like, but she pulls in a lot of that character-based education that was a component of his education into her classroom. And so she picked that professional book. And so staff members are encouraged to read 3 to 5 professional books that other staff members pick. So I picked that book in particular as just one of the ones that I do. I sponsor this program, and then kids can also read books that teachers pick. And then if they finish 10 for the school year, then they get a $25 Barnes & Noble gift card, and we do a field trip to Barnes & Noble, which we're doing next month. So
Cool.
it's just a reading program that I run.
Well, it turned out to be very, great timing for you that you read this particular book. Hey, nice. Did anybody learn anything, thing about Mr. Rogers, or did everybody know that he testified before Congress and, practically saved PBS? I certainly did not.
Yeah, that's what was really the most moving part of that film, I think, is just how he was so himself, I guess, and went up in front of Congress and sang and really let them see the emotion and the connection that he was making with, it's like what Chris was saying, it's just like these connections that he was able to make with individuals, and to me that was just really, really moving.
Yeah, me too. He was so unironic.
Really, yeah, and not cynical, which I think is so refreshing to see that, like, somebody have that lack of cynicism and irony where we're living in this society where we're always like kind of on edge with that.
Yeah. I was bowled over by that, actually, that he would sit and respond to Congress in that manner instead of, because I sort of believe we change our message according to who our audience is, but he doesn't. He didn't. His message, his approach there was almost exactly as though he were talking to kids, which, good for him. Yeah.
I think, and I was going back through what you had posted, Rochelle, and for the, the social emotional aspect of it, where he taught children how to identify and respond to their emotions. Yeah. As opposed to, we don't do that, or, stop behaving that way. He went through the process of helping them see, this is what you feel right now, and that's okay, but here are our choices. Mm-hmm. And that empowering them to make that choice, not just pretending like it didn't happen.
Right. I like how he used, I guess I didn't realize he was one of the founders for using puppets for letting children communicate and relate their emotions and feelings towards the puppets, because talking to an adult can be scary, especially when it involves emotional things. And it got me thinking about, because I worked in early childhood for a while, and we used puppets a lot with the kids. But then, like, middle schoolers, maybe not so much with puppets. That might be a little young. They might think you're a little crazy for using puppets to talk to them. But middle schoolers and teens, I found a lot of success with email with mine at the library. I give out my work email to them, and they send me suggestions or things they want to talk about and stuff quite a bit. So.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's not face to face, so they don't feel so intimidated, I think. So it helps them to open up.
Yeah. Does anyone have any other ideas about ways they can get their middle schoolers to be more, I don't know, revealing, or to be less intimidated by the conversation, a face-to-face conversation?
I mean, they're going to have them.
They are.
Yeah.
I think,
no, and I think that's what one of the things that you can do, though, is do the email, or if you have, informal types of, even, I don't know if I know some teachers text students and some don't. So, I mean, that's, whatever, but just kind of establishing that relationship, even if it just starts with the email and things like that, I think that's a good way to maybe build that trust, like she was saying. And then
I found having things to work on, things that take your attention, so you're not necessarily, you may be side by side, but you're not eye to eye, and especially big proponent of duct tape wallets for that reason, because they take a long time. They don't, you can't make one of those without paying attention to it a little bit, because it's sticky and you got to watch out. And that seemed to be a really great way of getting people's attention drawn someplace else where you could go. So what, open up a conversation, or just follow along with the conversation they bring up. So
I find just little things like remembering their names, and if they're just in there, just walk by and be like, hey, how's it going? And then just move on, and instead of stopping and interrogating them with a bunch of questions, and just keep it real light and informal, then they come and talk to you more often, I think. You get comfortable with you.
And like, if you do find out a little bit of information, like, I don't know, maybe they got a bad grade on their math test, just remembering that next time you see them, like, hey, how'd you do on your math retake? Or then, you can start to kind of build that relationship. I think also for me, just like trusting what they have to say. Like my teens are super open with me, and they know, like before we have conversations, I do let them know that I'm a mandated reporter, so that if there is something concerning, then I do have to report it. But they'll tell me pretty much anything, and I think just not judging them for the mistakes that they make and for their experiences has been really important for me to build the trust with them.
I think we're all laughing about what Tyler just posted, that he's card ET to his middle schoolers. I was just thinking, I was right before I came to this, I was just watching Homecoming that just dropped on Netflix with Beyonce, and thinking about how you could tie Mr. Rogers and Beyonce together and about what they were doing, and because it really is all about self-worth and connections and identifying with folks, and especially folks who giving people a platform that haven't had a platform, or recognizing people who feel not recognized. No, I was just thinking, if I were out there working with teens right now, how would Homecoming, how could you use that in any kind of way to connect with folks? Because I heard something on the radio yesterday that was promo. Somebody was doing an article about it, and one was saying, my 7-year-old is going to be talking about this Homecoming, as well as my 70-year-old mother is going to be talking about this, so it goes across, different generations, and how we could all use it.
I just wanted to mention something before Homecoming. I just did a project with kids with junior achievement, and they had encouraged us to have words of encouragement for each of the kids in our group, and that's something that we can do all the time too, because when kids are coming in and doing a project, or actually doing something more than just a quick checkout, but working on something, or making a wallet, or some sort of creative or whatever project, trying to personalize, hey, I really noticed how you're struggling with this, but you worked through it. So that was encouraging to me, and so I tried to compliment or encourage each of the 8 kids I had in my group individually, and that really does make a huge difference. So it was a good reminder for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was also very Mr. Roger-like to individually praise them, but on something that was real, not making
yeah
mistakes.
Absolutely, that's the key, because everybody always knows when you're just making it up. Did anybody else, I just have to say this about Mr. Rogers, I just felt like it was so timely that in the very, very, very first week of his show, he had King Friday the 13th take on building a wall, and how they diffused that issue, and how they worked through that issue. I mean, so what was that? I can't even remember the date that was, but was it 1959 or 1960? And somebody saying, can you imagine the outrage today? I don't know. I mean, maybe there would be outrage if he did that. Maybe we would see a backlash about that. But I just thought, my goodness, we are still building, we're still talking about that various ways. I just thought it was real. I had no idea he was so progressive, if you want to use that word. Do you think you'll use what you learned? Yeah. Want to say that question out loud, Allison, for folks who...
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. No, I was just thinking, and kind of going back, do you think that those are kind of strategies that you can replicate or plan to replicate? How he spoke to children, or how he treated people, or had difficult conversations? I mean, because like Carol was saying, he was having conversations with people openly about big issues. And those are difficult conversations to have one-on-one let alone explaining to a child, teen. That's a good point, Tyler. Matching energy levels.
Tyler, can you tell us more? I'm just thinking about some of the people who may be on a phone or not following the chat, able to follow the chat as well. So can you tell us more what you mean about your energy levels? And
so within the Mr. Rogers video, it was discussed that he deliberately went at a slower pace compared to like Batman and like cartoons of the day. He would, start off taking off his coat and then slowly putting his, cardigan on. And then he would meander to the bench, and then he would put on his shoes or his loafers or whatever he was wearing, and then he would go ahead and start the episode. He had little rituals like that, but then going further, he wasn't afraid to let that silence kind of linger within a conversation.
Mhm.
And most of the time, I try and match the energy level of a 5-year-old to a middle schooler, and it comes off disingenuous sometimes.
Well, like they said in the documentary too, that he never thought that going slow or having empty space was a waste. It was always well used.
So did it shock anybody with how the cast members acted, like mooning the camera and being inappropriate, and Mr. Rogers' response to that? I was kind of shook, to be honest, because that's not something I would do around like my pastor or anything like that. But you see a lot of that with the middle schoolers and teens as well, is that they'll act inappropriately and just kind of act like a deer in a headlight when you catch them or happen to stumble in upon something.
I thought it was very humanizing for Mr. Rogers that those kinds of things. He didn't appear shocked. He didn't appear shocked about a lot of things. He really had a sense of I don't know, groundedness. Or just he was nonplussed about people's all kinds of different behavior.
I think that was the intent. I mean, because once you come back with that reaction of shock or something like that, you're assigning a meaning to that behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps he was trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
But he did have that one picture that they took of the cast or the crew member on his camera. He did give it to him later on, like months later, as a gift, as something funny. So I think he was kind of humorous and was in on it too. But he knew it was all for fun. So I mean, I think there's a difference between doing something completely inappropriate just to be inappropriate and then being silly.
I think I was impressed with the fact that he was a man of many, many fears. He had lots and lots and lots of fears, but he was really brave. When I think those things go together. I don't think you can be brave without being fearful. And that I can't remember whether it was from the documentary or one of the articles, but that both his mother and his grandmother, had a tendency to, be fearful for his well-being, and it was his grandfather who went by the title of Ding Dong, which I just found hilarious. And that he was absolutely non-ironic about that either, that his grandfather's nickname was Ding Dong. Was the one who really encouraged him and to face his fears and to, you know, try things out, and that's what he embraced, you know. But he was a man, he was not fearless by any stretch, you know. And I got that from a lot of what his wife had said. You know, he was concerned about a lot of things, but he chose to do them anyway. So that, for me, that was really powerful part of it. If I were trying to impress upon kids, you know, any of his characteristics, I would try to bring that out. Because I think we try, I don't know, it seems like our culture tries to teach us to be fearless, which I don't necessarily think is, you know, really very realistic. It's not our fears that we don't have, it's how we address those fears. And he seemed to really bring that out. So it's okay to feel whatever it is we feel. Fred Rogers, yes, there you go. So I guess how is your project? How are your projects going? I'd be really curious if any of you are going to show Mr. You know, this documentary, use it in your project in any kind of way, or I mean, clearly this is the first time we've popped this into the curriculum because it, you know, the documentary only came out last year. First of all, do you think it was a good thing to bring into this project? And is there a way you can use it, or did you get something out of it that you can, you know, to give you something to use or something to think about differently? And if you're going to use it, how are you going to use it? All right. Great addition.
I would like to say that maybe even if we didn't pick Fred Rogers, having some models to look toward I think would be positive in the project. And that could be people that are coming in and working with our groups, or it could be other different political or popular or other types of you know, famous models also. And he, even though he, you know, the kids that are teens are not going to be familiar with what he really did, I would really doubt that they would have an experience with Mr. You know, with the TV show or anything. But I do think having people to look up to and mentors and models could be helpful in the project.
I just woke up. Got any ideas of who other models, Chris? Anyone else?
I was looking at character education today, and I talked to kids about different types of people that I pull in from TED Talks or other kinds of things, like Kid President even. And so I give, like, we might watch a little Kid President from his YouTube channel, but then I'll just say, do you guys realize that this person has these really severe physical problems that, I mean, you know, like, he's overcoming a lot, and you know about him, and he stands up for things. And so, you know, as a kid, example would be one example that I've already used in the past, but I do like to use TED Talks and for different things. And so those are short, they fit into, like, you know, mini lessons that we are going to possibly use. But it would be also maybe to use a real person in the community. Our mayor would be a possibility because she has taken on a lot of different things, and we, in a small community, then certain people, a lot of kids might know about.
Mhm.
And so that would be something, a possibility that I could use too. That would be a real person that that the kids could meet.
Just so I'm clear, and the person that you mentioned first, kid president.
Yeah.
What is that? I don't know what that is.
You don't know who the kid president is?
No.
He has a YouTube channel, and he and his uncle, I believe, make up all of the shows, and he has a book that we have in our library, and it's precepts a lot. So, yeah. So
I'm just putting this in the notes. If anybody has a link, that'd be great. Yeah. So good. I don't know about that. Maybe you can put that on the COP, because maybe there's other folks who don't know. And he has a physical this kid has a physical disability.
His bones break really easily, so he has that disease where his brittle bone.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Great. Learn something new every day. Anybody else got a suggestion of someone that might be used as a?
Carol, I was just going to say too, I think Fred Rogers is still really relevant because a lot of kids now are growing up with Daniel Tiger.
Yep.
Which is done by the foundation.
Sure.
And so you still have a kind of generation of youth that are still, they may not know exactly who Fred Rogers is, but they know the songs.
Sure.
And
his brand certainly hasn't gone away. It's and their kids' parents today, a lot of folks and, young parents were certainly exposed to Fred Rogers. I mean, he was at it for 50 years. So, yeah. But I was also, thinking about Beyonce. I think she brings a powerful message of empowerment. She may not play as well in some communities as well as others. Anybody else? Got any ideas? What else are people doing for the project? Anybody want to talk about what's going on, how things are shaping up here?
I talked with Travis Hazelwood this morning from Games Workshop. So if any of you have heard of like the tabletop game Warhammer or anything like that with the little miniature things, they're getting ready to bring out a new service pack for libraries called Warhammer Allegiance, where their curriculum's going to focus on social emotional learning, which is really neat. Have a lot more of those concepts in there. And
can you tell us a little bit more about Warhammer and how they're gonna promote social emotional learning in that?
Yeah, so they've kind of come to this realization that you can actually have a lot of learning through play, and since they're having difficulty getting into actual schools for after school programs, libraries are awfully receptive to free things and gaming and anything that'll bring in teens, tweens, young adults. And this is a fairly popular demographic, especially around here, since there's not terribly much to do within the Corn Belt on a Friday or Saturday night. So yeah, there's a lot more information on the Warhammer After School Program website, but they're planning on going to the ALA conference this summer and presenting with the gaming roundtable about some of their findings and what they're going to go ahead and do to promote social emotional learning through workbooks, service packs, and things like that, free to libraries.
And you spoke with the person you spoke with today. Is that the
Yes.
president of?
Travis Hazelwood, he's like their director of communications and outreach.
Okay. And are you going to be able to work with him in any kind of way?
I'm hoping to. I've told him about the Future Ready with the Library project, and I've sent him Linda's contact information. I can also send him your contact information, Carol, if you'd
Okay.
like to learn more, because he was really excited about the Future Ready with the Library project. He's just not terribly local, and I was wondering how that would work out exactly for a partnership with like a large multinational conglomerate.
Gosh, I don't know how. I'm curious how and why. How did you make connection with him, and and pursue that?
Yeah, so my friends, I have a bunch of podcasting friends who are into board games. So they go ahead and some of their like side gigs are making miniatures for Miniature Market, writing campaigns for some of these different like Dungeons and Dragons and board games. And they had been told by Games Workshop that they were launching an after-school program, and they're like, "Hey, Tyler, you get on that for us." So, and yeah, I just started emailing him back and forth, and we ended up having a club launch last August here in Cherokee, and it's been really popular ever since, with about a high school senior class of about 40. We have 13 kids in from the high school.
Wow, that's awesome. Really
Yeah.
great. Well, maybe somebody will come up with a board game, that incorporate, Future Ready with the Library board game. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah.
We could all have miniatures. That is a joke. All right. That's great, Tyler. Thanks for telling us about that. Anybody else got anything that's going on that is working well as we come down sort of to the middle of April?
I'm totally in spring break mode right now, so I'm like not focused on any project related things, but
I just have to say, those of you who can't see Josie, we can tell that because she's sitting out on a patio or something, with nature in the background, we're all jealous,
I'm in Santa Cruz, a block from the beach. I'm gonna go
we're
swimming
really
in a
jealous.
minute.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm actually been working with my principal, and we're doing a program. It's called Get Focused, Stay Focused, and it's based on, like I was saying earlier, skills-based education and making connections, and also kind of doing a little bit of focusing on the future. So the program hasn't been implemented yet, but we're kind of still in the planning stages of it. And then so I'm teaching a class on it next fall, but what I'm gonna do now or after spring break is go into the middle school and work with the middle schoolers so that when they come into the comprehensive high school, we'll already have built that relationship and they'll already have an idea about the program, about Future Ready, and about Get Focused, Stay Focused, which is, it's really just about thinking about what you want to do with your future and how you're going to get there. It's a really cool program. It's really fun.
So what are you going to teach? When you say you're going to teach, what content are you teaching for Get Focused, Stay Focused?
So Get Focused, Stay Focused has a curriculum, so I'm using their curriculum.
Okay.
And then, so for my Future Ready portion, I'm going into the middle schools this school year, and I'm going to start working with the kids and doing some just so when they come in next year, they know me and they know about what we're going to be doing for the rest of the year.
Your relationship.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Right.
And building that trust, building the relationships, getting to know each other, getting to know what we're going to do with the Get Focused, Stay Focused program. And a lot of what we do.
Any kinds of activities you'll use with the middle schoolers yet?
I've used the snowball activity with the high schoolers. That's really fun. I haven't really formulated a full plan of what I want to do with them. They have a career class there, so I need to get back in touch with a woman. I met with her earlier in the year, get back in touch with her and see what she's been doing, like in the, since January. And then I'll go in and sometime next month, a couple at least. So I'm also working with our counselor, and she goes in once a week to kind of start building relationships there with the counseling department. So I'll work with her to do that. So
Keep us posted.
I will.
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly the kind of thing we'd like to hear about.
Yeah.
And I know we say this a lot, but I don't think we can say it too much. We want to hear about the things that work, but also about the things that don't work. I always think you learn so much more about things that don't work. You know, when things work, you know, when things work, you just go, oh, that was great.
Yeah, that was easy.
Yeah. But when things don't work, it's always like, how can I tweak it? What do we learn from that? That sort of thing.
Right. And I think for me, like what I really like about the Future Ready, or what I like about what people have been doing, is the social emotional learning part and not necessarily the content part. So I'm trying, or I mean, that is content, but not like the the hardcore educational content, which is kind of what I feel like the Get Focused, Stay Focused is. So I'm trying to figure out how I can incorporate that into what I'm doing. And I think just like going in and starting to build that trust and getting to know those kids, that's going to lay the groundwork for my successful program for when they come to me next school year.
Okay. Yeah. I think so too. I think that building those relationships is where it all starts somehow.
Yeah, I was at a conference in January, and I met with this amazing educator. His name's Ken Shelton, and we were talking, and he said, I don't care. He's an English and history teacher, and he said the bottom line is not the content, it's building the relationships with the kids. And that just really, it resonated with me so much. Like if they get anything out of school, it's having a strong relationship with a teacher.
Or a librarian.
Or a librarian. Well, I'm both. So a teacher, librarian, or a librarian, or with an adult, with a trusted adult. Having that strong relationship is more important than anything else.
Yep. I really try to instill that when people were coming to the library, even just getting their library cards, that if there's one thing that they can figure out, those folks that can make a relationship with a librarian have a better chance of doing better work, getting better grades, because you've always got someone to talk to about your schoolwork, if that's what you're doing, or your whatever it is. But, so is anybody got anything going on in their projects that's not working out quite like they thought? I see Kate's put something in chat. Slow here finding partners who want to become more involved than just giving them some cash. Today is the first time I got someone who say, I want to be involved in this. So that's why I'm doing community presentations, seeking partners. So there you go. Thanks for giving us that feedback, Kate. Anybody else finding a problem with finding community partners that actually want to be involved? Surely.
I've found that a couple of people aren't really suited to deal with teens or kids. Yeah. Because they're verbally abusive and berating.
Yep.
And then at least with me, our local chamber, they have their own set of ideals that they want to go ahead and pursue, and anything that I say is white noise. So it's just kind of like, okay, you do you, and I'll go on and do what I need to do.
Sad but true.
And I think that's part of the process, though, is really identifying those people before you allow them into your space, or into your programs, or into anything like that. Because even one person, like you said, if they're verbally abusive and they don't want to have the time to learn how to work with teens, then you don't want them around, because then it only takes one time, and then that audience is never coming back. They don't want to do it again.
Karen has also chimed in on chat saying she's having trouble finding folks who want to partner. This is great. I don't have the time. I think that's, you know, I appreciate it when people say that to me straight out. That at least that lets me know they have some sense of what their boundaries are, their limits are, and I'd much rather get that early on.
Straight up front than having, I'm sorry, I have laryngitis, but I agree. It's nice to have that up front. It's kind of, I found it to be a little demoralizing when everyone is like, hey, this is a fabulous idea. Congratulations. This is great. Let me know how it turns out. And you're like, I want you to be a part of it. And they're like, oh, yeah, I don't have the time.
Yeah, and you're getting a lot of people saying, yes, I understand what you're saying here.
Oh, thanks, Allison.
How about, does anybody have any programs scheduled in April or early May before, you know, that's future ready associated?
I just finished up helping with a program called Junior Achievement BizTown, and it is
Chris, can you say that again?
Expensive.
Sorry.
Junior Achievement.
Okay.
BizTown.
Okay.
Is that better? I think maybe my audio was going in and out. And so that was actually something I wasn't totally helping with. It's we chose to use it with our 5th grade students, but then I volunteered later on to help on the BizTown day. And so impression that other staff members had is like, oh my gosh, this is so much work, and we don't have time for this, and we're trying to like scrunch it all in. And then we just went yesterday for the full day, and like I said, I had 8 different kids doing pretty cool jobs, like being a CFO or being a videotape camera person or being a DJ. And then I had a reporter, because I was in charge of the broadcast center. And so it's really set up very well. And luckily in my area, there's a grant that supports it for every public school that would like to participate in it. And so it doesn't have a cost for the schools besides $5 per student. But you have to make a really big commitment on a school's part to do it. But the good positive, so in the past, before today, teachers were like, we're not doing this anymore. This is too much work. We don't have time. After yesterday, they were like, that was awesome. The kids really, I mean, we had kids giving speeches, we had them doing all these different tasks, and it was easy to find encouragement for the kids that I had, even just for the 4.5 hours that they worked, because they were really working hard and really stretching themselves. And so the next step for me is figuring out for those kids what makes logical sense next year. And so most of it, though, it seems like finances were the areas that they struggled with the most. But I liked them just getting to do just a job they get assigned. And because they did apply for jobs, but a lot of it is the teachers trying to fill in the slots. And all of my kids were like, open, their eyes were open to maybe a new type of position. Every single business has a CEO. So for a school, for those of us that are in a school application, if there's something like it available in our area, the curriculum is amazing, but it's pretty costly. So luckily, we have a grant that can fulfill it for us. And I feel like there's going to be more commitment, since the day was pretty amazing, to continue it. So that's a little bit negative and mostly positive.
It sounds mostly positive to me. I mean, really. And it sounds like it's really, got a strong tie-in and a great potential for partnering next year. And Rochelle also says that they do BizTown. So is there anybody else out there? Is this this is a junior achievement thing? Anybody else out there got that going on in their communities? It certainly seems like something, if you don't, and you do have a junior achievement local office, that would be something to look into. Good to know. So were you able to do any kind of evaluation with these kids, Chris, and see what they thought of it, or, get any feedback from them?
Actually, today I had all of those students in the library, and so my next thing is possibly asking them next school year to be entrepreneurs. That's what we're talking about. Maybe doing a program where within that next grade level, kids could decide to become entrepreneurs and start their own business within the school. Yep. And so that's what I presented, because I have a tower garden that I just started. I'm doing a gardening project in science with a different grade level. And so I asked them to just think about if this was a potential business. And we did a little math together because we're getting ready for state testing in another week and a half. And so that was my whole tie-in for what I had them for today for that time. And I just mentioned that everybody yesterday, one of the things that I struggled with was how much things cost and keeping track of that money. And then also the whole job of being CFO. Several of the kids from each class got to do that. So
that sounds great.
Into the next step.
Yeah. And if there's any components of BizTown that you guys, that you can take and replicate, I don't know, throughout the year, or pieces of it that you can put into place. Well, we've got 1 minute. Anybody have a burning issue they'd like to bring up before we go?
It's not a burning issue, but can I share what's happening at my library right now?
Sure.
I have a very unruly 3-year-old being chased by her mother through all the stacks in the library.
Awesome. We've all been there.
And and all my volunteers are looking at, I have a glass window in my office, and my volunteers are all looking at me like, what are you going to do about this? And I'm talking to you guys, laughing about it.
Yeah, keep talking. Even after we're gone, just keep talking.
I'll keep my headphones on, plug YouTube in. I'll be like, I hear nothing.
Kid president. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, you guys. Thank you, Rochelle, for taking the lead in our discussion today. Really appreciate it. And thanks for the information about BizTown, Kid President, all the other things that came up. What was the thing Tyler mentioned? It was War, that board game. Anybody remember? War something?
Warhammer or Warborn?
That was it. Warhammer.
Warhammer. Okay.
Yeah. All right. I'm just going to put that in here so I can. Warhammer was the game Tyler mentioned. Okay. All right. Thanks, you all. We'll be in touch. Okay. And let us know. Check in with your coach. Check in on the COP. We're here for you.